Welcome to Học tiếng Anh với Joseph, where we build vocabulary and practice pronunciation through reading. Today we are going to continue the story number 26 in The Cat in the Box, and this time we will fly quite high with hydrogen. The stars of the shows, there are many stars of the shows, but the two noticeable are Joseph Louis Gay-Lussac and Jean-Baptiste Biot. Flying high with hydrogen. Although the first confirmed human flight in a balloon famously took place on October 19, 1783, when a balloon designed by the Montgolfier brothers, Joseph Michel and Jacques Etienne, demonstrated the technique to an astonished crowd in Paris. Their balloon used hot air to generate buoyancy. The obvious drawback to this technique is that the balloon has to carry a fire on board and cannot stay aloft once the fire is exhausted. But even in 1783, it was clear from Boyle's law that the investigations of gases made by people such as Henry Cavendish and Joseph Black that a balloon filled with hydrogen ought to rise upwards through the atmosphere. This fired the imagination of another Frenchman, Jacques Child, who designed a hydrogen balloon made of silk which he coated with rubber to make it gas-tight. The first small Charlier, as such balloons became known, was launched from the Champ de Mars, the present-day site of the Eiffel Tower, on August 27, 1783. It was a 1,236 cubic feet or 35 cubic meters capacity sphere, capable of lifting about 20 pounds or 9 kilometers. After a flight northward, covering 13 miles or 21 kilometers and lasting 45 minutes, the balloon landed in the village of Jonis, where the local peasants, thinking it's the work of the devil, hack it to bits with knives and pitchforks. Less than 2 months after the Montgolfier brothers' first flight, on December 1st, 1783, Charles launched a manned hydrogen balloon from the Jardin des Tuileries, carrying himself and Nicolas Louis Robert, who had devised the method of coating silk with rubber. This hydrogen balloon had a volume of 13,420 cubic feet or 380 cubic meters, and the ascent was watched by a vast crowd, estimated at 400,000 people, half the population of Paris, and including Benjamin Franklin and Joseph Montgolfier. The balloon reached a height of about 1,800 feet, 500 meters, and landed at sunset in Nesso-la-Vallée, 22 miles or 36 kilometers away, after a flight of 2 hours and 5 minutes. Charles and Robert alighted unscathed just after sunset. Charles then took off again on his own and reached an altitude of about 10,000 feet or 3,000 meters, high enough to see the sun again, but pain in his ears made him release gas and land. Charles and Robert carried a barometer and a thermometer with them to measure the pressure and the temperature of the air. But these observations were very much a secondary consideration. The first truly scientific balloon ascents were made in 1804 by Joseph Gay-Lussac and Jean-Baptiste Biot, using hydrogen-filled Charlier balloons. Gay-Lussac was thoroughly familiar with the behavior of gases, and in 1802 had spelled out what is now known as Gay-Lussac's law, which says that if the mass and volume of a gas are kept constant, then the gas pressure is proportional to the temperature, on what is now known as the absolute or Kelvin scale, where 0 is minus 459.67 Fahrenheit or minus 273.16 degrees Celsius. He also discovered that equal volumes of gas expand by the same amount for the same increase in temperature. This is usually known today as Charles' Law because Jacques Charles discovered it in the mid-1780s, but as he had not published the discovery, Gay-Lussac found it independently. Gay-Lussac and Biot made an ascent together from the garden of the Conservatoire des Arts et Métiers on August 24, 1804. The object of the flight was to measure changes in magnetism and the composition and humidity of the air at different altitudes. They reached an altitude of 13,100 feet, not 131,000 feet, by the way, this is an error, 4,000 meters, and showed that the Earth's magnetic field does not vary noticeably with altitude, but they did not achieve any other significant scientific results. So Gay-Lussac obtained a larger balloon and made a solo ascent a few weeks later. On September 16, this time the balloon took him to an altitude of 23,018 feet, or 7,016 meters. For comparison, the height of Mount Everest is 29,035 feet, or 8,850 meters. This was far higher than anybody had previously flown. At this altitude, Gay-Lussac recorded a temperature of 14.9 degrees Celsius, Fahrenheit, minus 9.5 degrees Celsius, but stayed to make his measurements of the moisture of the air, magnetism, and so on. The magnetic measurements confirmed that within the accuracy of his instruments, the magnetic field is constant even up to this altitude. But he noted that he had considerable difficulty in breathing and that the air was so dry that his mouth and throat became parched to the point where it was painful to swallow a piece of bread. He also recorded an increased pulse rate, but because Gay-Lussac collected samples of air at different altitudes during his flight, he was able to analyze them in the comfort of his laboratory in Paris rather than struggling to make all the measurements with frozen fingers while in the basket of the balloon. This analysis showed that the composition of the atmosphere does not change with increasing altitude. Heading to the vocabulary section, let's practice a few terms together. Technique, going up, technique. Astonished crowd, Imagination, the verb is imagine, imagination, imagining. Barometer, thermometer. Barometer is to measure the pressure, thermometer to measure the temperature. Proportion, proportional. Proportion, proportional. Magnetism, we stress the first syllable. Magnetism, not magnetism, but it's a magnetism. Noticeable, noticeably, notice, the verb is notice. I notice you are doing something noticeable, noticeably. Accuracy. Accurate, you are right. Your facts are accurate. High degree of accuracy. Parched, parched. Parched. Okay, Thank you for your time, and I'll see you in the next story. Bye for now.